Here we go. Welcome, Average Joe Nation from around the globe. Props to you for staying up to date and keeping in the know. With fantasy football, man, very soon you'll reign. The knowledge that these three guys have, man, it is insane. Yeah, fantasy football talk hateful eight, they wear the crown. Hold it down. Pick up Blackburn and Trimboli, hold it down. Pulling up to the recording studio, we're getting loud. Getting ready, headphones on, red light go, break it down.
Welcome back to the Hateful Eight Fantasy Football Podcast. It's been a long layoff. So a little too long, but we're back for Season 3. Today's main segment is going to be talking way too early rankings quarterbacks. And there is tons and tons of fantasy news and notes today just because of, obviously, the signings and releases and trades, obviously, as well. It's just today's like the holiday for free agency kind of opens up officially at 4 p.m. today, so it's about an hour or so away from what we're doing right now recording-wise. So that's when officially everybody can sign their agreements, and I expect there to be some big names potentially to come out after 4 o'clock that maybe still out there.
Yeah.
So
It's just par for the course right now. It's
Yeah.
been a crazy 3 days, 4 days if you count Sunday.
Right. So, I mean, it started kind of leaking out on Sunday, and then Monday we got a couple big names, and then Tuesday rolled into a bigger name, and, I mean,
Yesterday was one of the biggest.
Yes, and then you had Le'Veon Bell come in at like the midnight 1 a.m. time frame this morning, come through for going to the Jets. So if you guys are on social media, we have a Facebook account, we have a Twitter account, and Instagram as well. You can follow those all at the Hateful Eight FF podcast. It's Hateful Eight FF on Twitter and on Instagram, and then on Facebook, it's the Hateful Eight Fantasy Football Podcast. Let's go ahead and get into a busy fantasy news and notes segment. And
Fantasy News and Notes.
all right, fantasy news and notes presented by Sleeper. Sports fans, if you hate your fantasy app, we've got the solution for you. Make sure you download the best free fantasy football app on iOS and Android. We use it here. It's, like I said, free. You can get it on iOS, Android. That's how we get all of our information ahead of any of the other major networks that you can get it. I mean, it's like instantaneous. As soon as somebody tweets something, it goes straight to the app, blows it up. If you heard the sound effect at the end, that's what you'll catch on your phone or tablet or even on the laptop. You can go on there. So I think it's sleeper.app on the computer, but on your tablet and obviously on your phones and stuff, you can get it through your app store, whatever that may be. General news, though, only really 2 of them. Denver ends up picking up the option on injured Emmanuel Sanders. Obviously,
They need somebody.
well, they need somebody, and it was either he takes the injury clause and makes a certain amount of money, or they pay him pretty much the same to be on the team and let him heal up and eventually come back. So,
Right.
Might as well roll the dice, hope he comes back.
yeah, most definitely. And then the big one, it's the old, we talked about just literally a couple seconds ago off air. Greg Olsen is going to potentially take the ESPN job vacated by Jason Witten, who obviously came back and now unretired to go play at Dallas. So
Yeah, it's the tight end switcheroo.
I was hoping for a Pat McAfee push.
yeah. I mean, he was one that kind of seemed to kind of get the push to be able to do it, but I just, unfortunately for Pat, I think he's qualified to do it, obviously, but I think he's got too many question marks around him of how he carries himself and how he handled himself, even on his own show. So I know that he has even said that it took forever for him to find anybody to kind of pair up with him and give him a spot to even have a radio show or a podcast himself. So probably wasn't the PR version of what ESPN wants to deal with. So
But see, I think ESPN needs it.
Yes.
I think it's too buttoned down in there right now.
yeah,
They need a little comic relief, and Pat's perfect for it. And he's got enough stories to keep it entertaining.
And experience. I mean, yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Obviously, ultimately for Greg Olsen. I mean, he kind of alluded to it potentially last year before the season started, and then he ended up rejoining the Panthers. He got hurt and ended up missing most of the season on and off. It just seemed like it just was an on and off lingering injury. So then signings. This is where the bulk of the information is going to come through. So we'll just kind of run it through, and if you guys have something you want to put into your 2 cents into the comment wise, we'll stop and talk about it. But Dwayne Allen to Miami. No.
Cool.
What about Mike Gesicki?
Right. I like Gesicki.
Does that take him out of
Their
the
quarterback
equation?
situations is what worries me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the quarterback?
No one knows at this moment.
They haven't known for years.
This is also true. Dan Marino is not coming back, so unfortunately they don't know who that is going to be. But he's a blocking tight end more so anyway, so I think that still helps Gesicki in the passing game.
When he was with the Colts, though, I mean, he did pretty well
Yeah.
with Andrew Luck catching-wise.
Everything I hear out of Miami, they still want Gesicki to take the next step and be the pass-catching tight end they hoped he was when they drafted him. But
Quarterback plays a lot into that.
exactly.
If you don't have a good quarterback, you're not gonna be good.
Yeah. Speaking of not so good quarterbacks, rolling into the next one, Case Keenum to Washington. They needed somebody other than Colt McCoy for competition purposes. Obviously, Alex Smith is not going to be entering the season and playing this year at all.
Yeah, he's probably not going to be back at all,
Right.
career-wise.
And so you've got a lot of money invested in him at the moment, so you kind of have to scrounge around and figure out what you're going to be doing.
Eating $20 million.
Yeah, not the best situation to be, but
Yeah, but I'm glad they don't bail on a guy just because he got hurt.
But you know what? We traded Denver. They got Flacco.
yeah,
We got Case Keenum for basically we got their 7th rounder. They took our 6th rounder, and so basically we didn't lose that much in the draft.
okay.
But Case Keenum's only costing us $3.5 million against the cap
That's not bad, and I mean, and it's somebody who
for
obviously
1 year.
True.
Yep.
Somebody who can come in and essentially is a veteran, and depending on what they do, if they ended up going and getting a quarterback even in the draft potentially, there's still rumors floating around that they might be taking one of these quarterbacks in their first round pick. Still.
Yeah, well, that might be smoke. I think there's a trade that's going to happen for Rosen. If it doesn't happen, I could see them potentially getting a Locke or Daniel Jones or somebody like that.
I'll tell you what, with all the defensive moves they've made so far this offseason, getting Rosen in a trade would be ideal.
I would love that because you know why? He's got 5 years with the first round, and he's on a rookie deal. So quarterback money is going to be nothing for us.
He needs out of Arizona. He doesn't fit that system at all.
We'll see what happens.
Carlos Hyde to Kansas City. Do you think that this helps or hurts Damian Williams?
Hurts.
Yeah, I go back and forth. Damian Williams still going to be the ball carry guy, but I can see some goal line touches going Hyde's way.
I was going to say, that's my biggest concern is the goal line carries, is because I think Damian Williams is the better pass catcher, obviously, out of the two. And as we saw in Kansas City's offense, they like to throw the ball and they like to move the ball quickly down the field. I just think that it's, for good or for bad, I think it's going to come down to how quickly that offense is moving and who the running back in is at the time. Because if they're going no huddle, if they're going quick snap, they're not going to change out backs, and Carlos Hyde might be in for a series, in theory, if they're trying to move this ball down the field, or Damian Williams or whatever. But I do think the true test will be to see how early in the game goal line carry-wise is what my biggest concern for these guys is going to be. But
Just saying, when Hunt was out and Williams had the show, he was putting up 15-plus a game.
Right.
Damian Williams was.
Yeah.
He's not going to get that every game now.
No.
Right.
But we all know that Andy Reid is he likes to pick one running back to be kind of the main ball carrier, or if it's like the 60-40, but that 40 does become valuable for fantasy purposes. Right. It may be like a running back 3-tier guy, or in the back end of like a running back 3, but it might be somebody who can start. And I mean, we look, who was it? Kareem Hunt with him getting
Spencer Ware.
Spencer Ware. I mean, it just depended on each time. Whoever was the main ball carrier was relevant, but the backup became relevant potentially. And I think this is when we get later into the season about handcuffs and stuff like that. I do think that Carlos Hyde could be one of those potential handcuffs that if you get Damian Williams, based on where he's drafting right now, could be a potential steal health-wise for purposes. But
anybody in that offense is probably going to be relevant, just saying.
Yeah.
When you got Mahomes as your quarterback, everyone's going to have points.
Right.
True.
Now, it's
Now,
not like Oprah gives out gifts.
you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown. Danny Amendola to Detroit. I think this is a good thing. I think he kind of fills in what Golden Tate vacated when he left to go to Philadelphia. So I think this is a good thing for Danny Amendola, and I think he gets reunited with the Patriots defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia comes through. I just think that ultimately, for me at least, I think this is a good thing. I don't think it makes him like obviously a wide receiver too relevant. I think it just depends on the format. If you're in a PPR format, I think that ultimately you can get value out of him. He might be a middle to back end of the wide receiver 2 tier group, but I think he's more so like the end of the 2, beginning of the 3, just because of that offense is going to be Kerryon Johnson and Kenny Galladay.
Right.
And Jesse James now, obviously, which we'll get into that. But
I think Amendola is just a plug and play. I really like it for Kenny Galladay's sake, though. It
Yeah.
really helps him and Marvin Jones out.
Yeah, their receivers are legit now. You got Jones and Galladay. You put Amendola in the slot, and they got Jesse James now, big tight end.
That's people take that for granted when Kenny Galladay was playing the Amendola role. Jones and Golden Tate just blew up.
Breaking news.
oh, what do we got?
My Washington Redskins signed Adrian Peterson, 2 years, $8 million.
All right, there you go. Bringing back a veteran to kind of back up a potential. I mean, a guy who's coming off a pretty major injury. So with Darius Geis there, I think that's a good situation. I think that's a good fit for both.
Well,
the Redskins.
The Bears were really interested in AP, so that
I think that kind of put a fire to it.
that
they
lit a
had to hurry
fire
up.
to Washington to get the deal done. And 2 years, $4 million a year, that's not bad for a 1,000-yard back.
No, especially with the offense that they put out on the field, and he still managed to do as well as he did.
Right.
So now for the Bengals, they signed back C.J. Uzomah, tight end. They needed one of those guys because the other guys, I don't know if they're potentially. I know that they're probably not bringing the other guys back.
Well, Croft is a Buffalo Bill,
Yep.
Yeah,
and I don't know if they're going to spend the money on Eifert or not.
probably not.
Nope.
Uzomah played well last
They're
year.
not going to
until
spend the
he
money on anyone right now.
This is probably true. That they got a new head coach, so it'll be interesting to see how the tight end is used in that offensive style play. So, and then Jamison Crowder, former Redskin, headed to the New York Jets. So, I think this fills a need for the Jets because I think that they needed somebody to potentially step in just in case. I just drew a blank. You got Robbie Anderson
Nunwa.
and Nunwa coming back off of an injury potentially. I just think that this gives them a solid core of. I don't want to call them complementary wide receivers because there's no true wide receiver one in that group. I think they're just a bunch of complementary guys. They're kind of like the Patriots wide receivers. It's a bunch of guys who know what their niche is and they do it well. Robbie Anderson's going to be your deep home run threat. Anunwa is going to be kind of your middle to short guy who's going to be able to kind of get the inside routes and things like that. But for me, Jamison Crowder is going to be your slot guy, and he's going to be the one that thrives in that offense, I think, overall.
He can go deep, too.
Yeah.
True.
Well, listen, I'm going to jump down. I just think it's another piece for Donald here with Le'Veon Bell, too.
True.
Yes.
So you add it all together. Crowder makes perfect sense now in this offense. They've got Bell. I think they're building around this young quarterback. This is the way I'd want to build my team. So I just think the Jets are doing everything right.
Hey,
right
they're
now.
young. All those guys are in their mid-20s.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is going to be an interesting setup for these guys. I mean, I think that out of their offensive guys, I think Bell is the oldest one at 27, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad setup for a young
No.
team that's trying to build, and they've brought in some offensive linemen to try to switch in from. They brought one guy in, I believe it was Asamela or what
Osamele.
from the Raiders.
Demetrio Osamele
There you
from
go.
the Raiders.
So I mean, I think that they're trying to line up these inside guys.
Still processing all that.
The name you're still processing the name. Okay, so then as we talked about, Jesse James is headed to Detroit. I don't know how good or bad that is because we do have a new offensive coordinator. Jim Bob Cooter is no longer in Detroit, so you do have potentially a new offensive setup. And if Matt Patricia brings any type of offensive style like Bill Belichick does, the tight end will be used and used heavily. And Jesse James, to me, is an athletic enough tight
Yeah.
end to be able to go out.
He's a good blocking tight end, but he's also a very good pass-catching
Right.
tight end.
And I mean, he succeeded when he had his opportunities there in Pittsburgh. I mean, but they had him and Vance McDonald, so it was kind of like a 1-2 punch, and it was just whoever was out there at the
Well,
moment.
speaking of Pittsburgh, with him leaving, that ups Vance McDonald's fantasy value, and with AB leaving.
I agree. I think that Vance McDonald could be one of those sneaky guys like George Kittle was last year, that's just kind of flying right at the line of the radar, where like you know who he is, but you don't. You're not sure what his relevance is going to be.
Well, if you're one of
exactly.
those guys that drafts like tight ends like late,
Yeah.
Jesse James could be a good steal for you.
Yeah, I mean that's what a lot of people coming off of like what you'd said last year with George Kittle and even Eric Ebron. Guys were drafted somewhere in that 8 to 12 round range, and they ended up being like the top 5 tight end, which was worth it when you draft a guy that late. So, man, old reliable has shown back up again in Frank Gore to Buffalo. I looked. Do you realize that there are the three oldest running backs in the NFL? You got Frank Gore, Chris Ivory, and LaShawn McCoy, all three on the Buffalo Bills backfield.
Well,
You've got to be kidding me.
Isn't their total age just shy of 100?
I don't know.
Together.
They've got the most. Those two, Frank Gore and McCoy, have over 25,000 yards. It's the most rushing yards combined in the NFL.
All right, so does
Duo.
McCoy get cut?
No.
I think if any of them get cut, it's
Ivory.
Ivory out of the
Yeah.
three, personally, because I think Gore's more of the bruiser back that I think Ivory could be comparable to, and then McCoy's McCoy.
That's going to be a true running back by committee, 50-50. I think we'll look at Gore to get the majority of the goal line stuff.
I just can't see this trio being what they roll out there week one.
I
don't
have
see
no
Chris
idea.
Ivory being there, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't either. That's who I think's the odd man out of the group. And then the quarterbacks. Nick Foles ends up signing to Jacksonville, which was, I was going to say, surprise. We all kind of figured that was coming.
Well, it was between them or Washington. Washington wasn't going to pay him $20 million a year and pay Alex Smith.
This is also true. But I think this is a helpful thing to Nick Foles, and I think this, as long as they've got Leonard Fournette still in the offense, and they're continuing to try to build that offense by bringing in some wide receivers, whether that's through the draft or through free agency or trade, something. They need to do something, because the three wide receivers that they currently have, you have DJ Chark, you have, I just drew a blank on the guy from Oklahoma, Day Westbrook is in there, and then you have, I
can't think of his name.
That's bad when you can't think of the guy's name, but I'm just saying ultimately.
Well, that's just how good they are.
Also true.
The guy that had one good game two good games last year.
Right. But anyways, so you got three kind of. I just feel like they're just kind of like complementary wide receivers. I hate to use that phrase, but to me that's essentially what they are. Neither of them are stud wide receivers. Is it? I just drew a blank. Guy out of USC. Is that the guy who I'm thinking of? No.
Well, Marquise Lee will be back too.
Okay, that's who I was thinking of.
Cole.
Keelan Cole.
That's
So, I
what I'm
mean, they've
thinking
got
of.
a bunch of guys, but they're all kind of the same, in my opinion. There's no one that like stands out amongst the others. And to me, I still think that offense is still based around the run game, for good or for bad.
I'm just surprised Foles got a 4-year deal.
I'm
We've
not.
seen him when he comes out as the guy, the starter. He implodes.
Well,
yeah.
Jacksonville's desperate. They've had multiple years of Blake Bortles.
I would think they would have learned from Blake Bortles.
No.
Well,
no.
Instead, I think they're repeating themselves.
Well, look,
here.
the last 2 years have helped Foles tremendously.
Yeah.
2 years ago, he came in, led the team to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl. Last year, same thing. Wentz gets hurt, Foles comes in, leads him to the playoffs.
Well, I get that, but when Wentz was out at the beginning of the year and Foles started, he was terrible.
I know, but
They must think that they're going to be able to build something around him.
well, they got the same offensive coordinator.
So maybe they need to just sit him the whole first game, and then let him come in week 2 as the backup, and then he could lead the way the rest of the year.
But yeah, Philly's ex-offensive coordinator is now down in Jacksonville.
Oh, well, that makes
so
sense.
that makes sense why they wanted Foles.
Now you got to me a bigger named wide receiver in Adam Humphries to Tennessee, which to me is disappointing for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, because Marcus Mariota is hot garbage.
He is man, he is bad, and I think we've all tried to like give him that grace period of being
Not
like,
me.
hey, okay, maybe this is the year. And then I think last year we all agreed upon this is a make it or break it. So and it never made. So I just think that we're just sitting here. And I feel bad for Vrabel because, I mean, I just think that he's trying to scrounge around. I mean, he's brought in, I think this is like the 3rd or 4th offensive coordinator for Marcus Mariota. And I think he's just trying to pull at straws, trying to get somebody in there that can either motivate Marcus Mariota or at least motivate him enough to win games.
Well, here's the deal. They're trying to put too much on Mariota. Look at that guy you got in your backfield named Derrick Henry. Okay? That guy is a monster. Run the offense through him and let Mariota be a game manager, not a game winner.
Well, see, I think Humphries fits that mold, though.
Yes.
He's a third down monster.
Humphreys was one of my top guys in this free agency after Brown and Odell Beckham.
My concern is the fact of what the offense that he's going to. He's not going to a high passing, efficient offense.
Right.
You're going to an offense that's kind of the old school play action rollouts. It's not really, and you have a few zone reads, but it's really not a lot of down the fields or a lot of in and out routes. It's pretty simple.
Well, yeah, Mariota needs a true route runner, though. Humphries does that. It's not gonna, exactly. He's not going to bomb it downfield all game, but like Blackburn just said, feed the rock to Henry, dump it to Humphries. Just keep moving the chains.
Yeah,
It's
just
going to be small,
feed the
boring
running back,
offense, but
play action, Humphreys.
There you go. I mean, that could work. I just, initial thought was just like, man, out of all the places he could have went, this is like the worst on the line of
And he's
groups.
young. That's why
I
it's
was
a young guy.
I was waiting for his name to pop up, and when it did, and I seen Tennessee, I just went.
I thought he might be the one that they bring in instead of bringing back Hearns and Beasley and bring him into Dallas to kind of be a younger version of Beasley.
I'm trying to take good players to Dallas.
Well, you know what? We can only take so many.
Well, see, I thought New England would this is a perfect fit for New England. I know
thought-
they have these guys, but this is what they thrive with.
I
is these-
thought Green Bay would be a good fit for him.
I don't know what Green Bay's
With
doing
Randall
right
Cobb, not
That's who I was going to say. With Randall Cobb not being brought back, I really thought that this would be maybe that was another option. I thought Dallas. I thought
now. Of course,
Green
you thought
Bay.
Dallas.
I thought
every
Indianapolis
free
was.
agent
I thought
wanted
Indy
to-
could be one. I'm just thinking of a couple guys that potential like offenses that he could be used efficiently.
We'll get to Indy.
Don't worry, Indy will be here. Mike Davis played himself a contract,
And well deserved.
well deserved, to Chicago. So I don't know if this is the official writing on the wall for Jordan Howard's exit stage right, but I think this is kind of the
I'm gonna say yes.
this is the preeminent, like, hey, just so you know, we brought in Mike Davis. We're going forward with Tariq Cohen. You're going to be exit stage right here soon.
Well, Tariq Cohen's already showed last year that he was much more valuable, especially in fantasy,
Yeah.
than Jordan Howard.
Oh, yeah.
Jordan Howard came on strong toward the end of the year, but he's coming up on his last year of his rookie deal, so they're gonna have to they're gonna have to give him all that money.
Right.
So they're just gonna get rid of him.
And I think that we found in Matt Nagy's offense,
Yes.
ultimately, he doesn't fit in that type of setup. He is more in a traditional, I mean, I'm not even saying like a power, I'm just saying in a traditional shotgun offense. It's not the high flying in and out. Everybody can move. Everybody can do anything on the field. I mean, it's essentially the Kansas City offense. How many times did you see Watkins and Hill and Spencer Ware or even Kareem Hunt when he was there? I mean, these guys, they line up outside. They line up in the slot. I mean, and they were running back, wide receiver. It did not matter. Travis Kelce lined up in the backfield. I mean, they did shovel passes. This is essentially the Kansas City offense, but they brought it to Chicago. And to me, Jordan Howard, I just don't think he ever really fit into the offense, unfortunately for him.
You know where I think Jordan Howard would be a really good fit, and I hate to say it, Philadelphia.
I think that's where we're going to end up seeing him go, honestly. That's the team, I
They're still
think.
linked with Coleman. They
True.
haven't given up on him yet.
I'd rather have Howard than Coleman.
True.
They've got
I'd-
pass catching running backs.
I want Coleman in that offense.
Yeah.
He proved to me when Devonta Freeman was out that he couldn't do nothing.
Well, he'll be a split back either way.
I think he has to go to for me, Tevin Coleman has to go to an offense that he's not the guy. He has to be in a true timeshare, because I think he thrived with Devonta Freeman being there and kind of that 1-2 punch, the off speed where Freeman was kind of the grinder down the field.
Minnesota's looking for a backup running
They
back.
are looking for one. They didn't bring back Latavius Murray. So Devin Funchess, as we said, we talked about soon to be Indy. Devin Funchess signs to the Indianapolis Colts. I think that's a good thing
I love
for
it.
him,
Yeah.
specifically, and the offense.
Yeah. I mean, Luck needed another big wide
That's
receiver.
what he needed, a big. Yeah, he had Ebron,
Mm-hmm.
okay, who caught a lot of touchdowns last year. I don't know how many offhand, but Funchess is that big outside guy. You got Ty inside, and the guy from the Redskins a couple of years ago, I forget his name, but he had a really good year last year.
Don't forget Jack Doyle's still in that offense.
He's coming back from an injury.
They got a good, and they were the best offensive line last year.
Yeah, I just think that they did what they needed to, and I hate to say it, but I mean, I think their down year was supposed to be last year, because you really think about it, they came back with luck. They were literally drafting tons of offensive linemen early and often. They were trying to move offensive linemen in and out. They drafted an offensive lineman in the first round, and I know that everybody kind of laughed about it. And I mean, us included, were like, but we also then after the pick was like, well, that means Andrew Luck's coming back, because you don't draft a solid offensive lineman that early if you're not expecting to have to protect Andrew
They
Luck.
invested heavily in Andrew Luck,
True.
contract-wise, so you better protect
They
him.
were all in.
Yeah.
Right.
I just think that Devin Funchess, like you said, being able to line up on the outside, and he's not going to see double coverage like you saw in Carolina, in
You
my
can't,
opinion.
because you got Ty, you got Ebron, and there's a lot of weapons
Right.
there.
So I think this is helpful
Don't
for.
forget about Mack and Hines out of the backfield. So.
This is also true. So I just think ultimately this is a good signing for Funchess as well as the Colts, and for fantasy purposes overall. I just think this is a perfect setup.
I liked it. Yeah.
And then the Buffalo Bills brought in Cole Beasley and John Brown. So essentially, which is crazy to think, because they're both kind of the undersized wide receivers, more of like the the nitty-gritty guys, the guys that do like the dirty work. They're not the guys that are getting the flashy plays over the top all the time.
John Brown gets over the top.
He is. I was gonna say that's going to be his niche. Coming into Buffalo, I think he's going to be the one that's going to be helpful to go over the top. I think he has that more so than Beasley, but I think that they're still both kind of like the inside route guys. They're both coming out of running the slot routes a lot. But
Well, I was thinking the same thing Blackburn was thinking. Josh Allen's got a killer arm. And
well, yeah,
Brown was a perfect fit.
He'll be the over the top guy. Who was the guy they had last year? The rookie.
for what?
Foster.
Buffalo. Foster. He
Yeah.
came on strong.
You got Zay Jones is there
right.
still.
And now you got an underneath guy in Beasley. They got the Bengals tight end,
Yeah,
Croft. I mean,
and their offensive line I think is going to be a little bit better, and they've
got some old running
Allen's
backs.
they've got some
question-
old school
he's
running backs.
Allen's a true question mark this year for fantasy.
He is. I mean, he had
Well, at
weeks.
least-
I was gonna say he had weeks last year that it was like he was top five, and then it was like outside the top 10, and then it was like outside the top 12. And you're just like,
The game that killed me was I started Vikings defense against them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was a
Well, he gets
it
a
was,
ton
it
of
was a whooping.
he gets a ton of points on the ground running the ball. But I
Right.
think adding all these receivers, they're trying to prevent that.
well,
They
yeah.
don't want him to
Now
run
he's
as
got
much.
actual weapons that he can use.
Yeah,
Now let's see if their offensive line can
Now
get put
well,
together.
they just need to get a running back that's under the age of 30.
I think that's like that's their running
That's
back
their
group.
staple.
Like when you go to the club and you see the bouncers at the front door and like they ID you, like to get into the running back room for like studying purposes, you have to show your 30 and up like driver's
AARP
license, your
card.
AARP card to get into the running back room. Honestly, but I don't know, man. I think that they'll figure out their running back situation. I think, but ultimately bringing in Beasley and John Brown into that Buffalo offense with, like you said, with Josh Allen's
It'll
cannon
help.
of an arm
It's
is going to
gonna
be
help.
helpful. Now, Latavius Murray, because you had mentioned that Minnesota's going to be looking for a running back. Latavius Murray is headed to New Orleans.
I love it.
I think
I
it's
do
a
too.
perfect setup. It's a cheaper Ingram, essentially, in my opinion, because you're getting the same essential style play, that bruiser kind of back, but you're paying him less than what Ingram was going to want to come back.
Well, Ingram just signed with Ravens today.
Right.
3-year, $15 million. That's $5 million a season.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Right, but I think he wanted out. Honestly, I think I truly
He
believe
wants to be the starter, the guy.
Right.
Kamara's the guy there.
and he knows that, and I think that they're good enough friends. It sounds like that. I think he kind of was like, you know what, I'm gonna let you do your thing. You're the future. I'm only probably gonna be here for, even if I signed, it would be for maybe like another 2-year deal, and I'm out, and I'm looking for someone. So why not take it while the money's hot?
But like you mentioned earlier with Kansas City, handcuff
Absolutely.
Latavius Murray.
Oh yeah, and Kamara, most definitely.
That will be one of the top ones, I think.
I was gonna say he might be the one that kind of him and Hyde and some of these other guys that are gonna be coming through that you're gonna hear about. But
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have his own value
I
by
do too.
himself.
I do too. He's a very underrated runner, in my opinion. He's
they're
violent.
going to find a way to use him. Sean Payton is like an offensive. I know that everybody talks about with the Sean McVay tree and everything, and saying that Sean McVay is a genius, and he is for offensive wise. But Sean Payton's been doing it longer, and he is still, in my opinion, a smart offensive coordinator. And he finds ways. I mean, he brings in Taysom Hill and manages to make him relevant. I mean, he uses guys that you've never even heard of in the wide receiver room, made them relevant for a couple weeks.
Right.
So,
But if you look at their package, I mean, they have a Pro Bowler guy on every level.
Right.
They got Michael Thomas. They got Kamara. They got Breeze. All their guys.
I mean, even Watson's relevant. I mean, he's not relevant every week, but he is fantasy relevant depending on the matchup.
Right.
So, and the defense is still a younger enough defense to be relevant, to be helpful, to kind of keep the points hopefully down a little bit. But I like this move for Latavius Murray, and I like it for the Saints because I think it brings in a younger setup for them potentially, and I think that Latavius Murray was willing to take maybe a little bit less to get out of Minnesota, maybe get a chance to get a bigger role, because I know that he knows that coming into Minnesota next year, it was going to be probably Dalvin Cook's show now that he's healthy.
Well, last year in free agency, when he signed with Minnesota, he was supposed to be the guy.
yeah,
Or no, 2 years
2 years
ago.
ago, and they had Jerick McKinnon was going to be the guy.
yeah.
Then they brought in, they signed him.
Well, they signed Cook to be the guy.
Right.
Or,
Murray.
Murray to be the guy. And they drafted Dalvin Cook.
Right.
So that kind of like hampered things right there. So he wants to be the guy.
Right.
He's not going to be the guy in New Orleans, but like you said, I think he'll have his own value.
Right. And then this one was a complete, utter surprise after last year.
Trash.
last year's
Just
debacle.
shows what Miami's doing.
Devontae Parker re-signs to the Miami Dolphins.
They're going to draft a quarterback. They
I
have
hope
to.
so for everyone's sake because, I mean, they didn't. I think it was like a total of like, I forget exactly. I think it was like 10 or $11 million is what it was for 2 years for him. So, I mean, it's
Still
like
too much.
it is. But I'm just saying they don't really.
No.
They let Amendola go, obviously, and then they went ahead and brought Parker back. They've got, I believe, Stills is I think Stills is a free agent actually. So I'm just saying they've got.
Well, Parker kind of turned it on for like 2 or 3 games toward the end of the season last year.
They need a
For whatever
quarterback.
that's worth. I know, but
They've got
The guy's got talent. He just can't stay on the field.
Right.
And the antics he does off the field.
Right.
I think the quarterback doesn't help either.
Absolutely.
He's one of those guys. Remember last year we were like, oh, Ebron stinks. Oh, yeah, he's going to the Colts. Cool, good job. And look what he did.
right. It was a change of scenery, but for them, for Miami, it's a change of coaching staff. Adam Gase is gone. The offensive style that they had previously is now in New York. So I think depending on how we see this offense, it could be a beneficial thing. I mean, it may not have been a change of scenery in the sense of venue, like where he's going to be at team-wise, but having a new coach, new coordinator and stuff could be beneficial for him overall. And if they bring in a quarterback, I mean, I know that there's rumors, but there's been rumors that maybe the Dolphins potentially move up to get Kyler Murray because they really like his offensive style and they want to kind of make it a spread offense. Tyrod Taylor's name was linked initially to Miami, but he
signed with the Chargers.
signed with the Chargers, so that didn't help anybody.
Well, you can always go get Blake Bortles when he gets released.
This is coming down the pike, don't worry.
Stay in Florida.
So you already have a house there, I'm sure. Brett Hundley signs with Arizona, and we talked about this off air. I think this is maybe a potential sign that they're transitioning into the more mobile quarterback like Cliff Kingsbury's wanting, because Brett Hundley is a more mobile style offensive quarterback.
Still
young, and he's got a good enough arm that if something were to happen, if they do draft Kyler Murray, that he could come in and be efficient enough to help out David Johnson. I think the big thing here with Cliff Kingsbury's offense is you need a solid quarterback because they're kind of the point guard of the offense, and you need somebody who can run his specific offense. He can't. I think that's why Josh Rosen is going to be traded out to somebody before. There you go. Before draft day, ultimately.
Arizona just needs a quarterback that can run because that offensive line isn't blocking at all.
That's what I was going to say. Even if they draft Kyler Murray, you better be glad he can run.
Right.
He's going to have to for a while.
Right.
And I also, selfishly, I want DJ to be better and more relevant. And I think Kyler Murray makes that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I just hope they trade Rosen to Washington.
Yeah. We'll see.
Make it happen.
We had already kind of hit on the point. Le'Veon Bell signs with the New York Jets. Do you think this helps Sam Darnold ultimately?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
I think his volume is going to be through the roof.
I was going to say, I think that based on what Gase is wanting to do, he has no problem throwing to the running back. He has no problem dumping it down to the running back. And if he knows what he's getting in Le'Veon Bell, and if they're continuing to upgrade that offensive line, I wouldn't even be surprised if they go out and draft one of these wide receivers at some point.
Well, wasn't Gase the offensive coordinator in Chicago when Matt Forte was there?
He was. He was also the offensive coordinator. He was the head coach there when in Denver when like C.J. Anderson and all those guys were blowing up. So I'm just saying.
I could see him putting Le'Veon in kind of like a Matt Forte role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Forte thrived in that offense, and I think that I know that people give Adam Gase a hard time, and we all saw his press conference. I'm sure everyone in social media saw it with his eyes rolling around trying to figure out what was going on. Right.
It was crazy.
Ultimately, I think that he is a very intelligent offensive guy. I just think that he didn't have the parts. He couldn't get the parts that he wanted in Miami. And I think he really he put a Band-Aid on the situation when he brought Cutler in. And that was only because Cutler knew how to run his offense. But he never really had the wide receivers that he wanted. I just think that he couldn't ever get the talented guys that he wanted style-wise, ultimately. But now you've got a stud running back in that backfield that's going to demand not only carries but also receiving yards. But the defense is going to hone in on it, which is going to help, in my opinion, whoever the quarterback throws the ball to, because offensively he's going to have time, if that makes sense to do. So, and we talked about Mark Ingram to Baltimore. I think this is a good thing for Mark Ingram, and I think this is a good thing for Lamar Jackson and Harbaugh. I just think this is overall great offensive setup. I think.
I think Ingram's got a little chip on his shoulder too.
Yeah.
Which, as a Bengals fan, I'm not looking forward to seeing Mark Ingram twice a year.
No.
Yeah, because they let go. What's his name?
I know who you're talking about. I just drew a
I
blank.
just had it.
I know who you're talking about. Anyways, Alex Collins.
Collins. Yeah.
And Gus Edwards is there, but no, I don't know if they're really
He showed
want.
flashes last year.
He did, but I think that's the fact that they brought in such a higher name profile running back tells me that they're not willing to go in the draft and make Gus Edwards kind of the guy right now.
Well, see, I also think it means they're going to have they're going to hand the ball off a ton this year.
I do too.
With Lamar Jackson's under 20-yard
Yes.
throwing pattern, yes. The two guys that I would want in that offense, Mark Ingram and Mark Andrews, are going to be the two guys that I want in that offense.
Or Jackson.
Lamar Jackson could be an interesting play. I mean, he's gonna have weeks where you're frustrated, like, oh my gosh, he just threw 3 picks, Nathan Peterman style, but
Not 7.
not 7. But ultimately, there's gonna be weeks where he wins you weeks because he's gonna have 30-some points because he's running for 2-3 touchdowns and has 100-some rushing yards and maybe 150 passing yards. So
He's a plug-and-play
Right.
quarterback.
but
I like Ingram there. It's a good fit for him.
yeah. Then Tyrell Williams signed today to the Oakland Raiders. Two-year deal.
So they got Brown and Edwards.
Yeah.
Or Brown and Williams.
Yeah, so ultimately, I think this is a great setup for this offense going forward. And to me, ultimately, everyone's like, well, who's the running back? Well, you got Marshawn, but one of our guests from last year, Chris Warren, will be one of the running backs. I just think that, to me, this puts pressure on, and Gruden is putting the pressure on Derek Carr. For good or for bad, if Derek Carr hasn't picked up on it, when you bring in Antonio Brown, now you bring in Tyrell Williams, and if you bring Jared Cook back.
I think they should bring Cook back.
Right. I just think that you're putting a lot of pressure on Derek Carr to figure it out. Either you are our quarterback for the future going into Vegas, or you are not. It's one or the other. We're not going to keep dragging you along and babying, because Gruden is not. That's not Gruden's thing. He is not one that's going to baby you and like pat you on the back and give you the, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. He's going to be the guy that gets in your face and be like, who were you throwing to? What were you doing? I mean, he's going to use some adult 4-letter words, I'm sure, to explain this, but ultimately, he's going to be the guy that I think he wants a quarterback that's going to be like a Rich Gannon. I mean, I know that's for people who may not have been born when Rich Gannon was the quarterback for the Raiders, but he was the guy. He didn't go out and win the games, but he didn't go out and lose the games. He was a game manager, and I think ultimately, to me, I think Gruden might end up settling on a game manager quarterback if it's not Carr.
Gruden's too high profile for that.
Now he is?
He'll grab a star quarterback at some point. He's got 3 first-round draft picks.
Could you
I think
imagine
those are-
him drafting like a Kyler Murray or somebody if it makes it to him?
He's said he's enamored with Kyler Murray.
I
He
just
can package 2 of those up and go get them.
yeah.
I don't know. My opinion on this is still mute at the moment, only because I want to see what they do in the draft. Right now, I don't get what they're doing. I get why you go get Brown; it's cheap.
I really
don't-
thought-
you don't build around a 31-year-old wide receiver. I don't care that he's going to be a future Hall of Famer. You just don't do it that way,
Right.
especially when you don't know what you have.
Unless you're ready to win now.
I mean,
Right, exactly. That's what I
Le'Veon Bell
wanna
and Mark
see.
Ingram's names were attached to the Raiders potentially to be running backs to come in, and I thought that might be the piece. And I mean, Tyrell Williams' name has always kind of seemed been linked to Oakland from the beginning of free agency since he wasn't going back to the Chargers.
Here's
But
the deal: the Raiders had one of the most open cap space. They had one of the most caps available
Yeah.
in all of football. So any high-profile free agent offensive weapon was linked to them.
yeah, so well, this is true. So
Same with Jets.
So that's the end of the signing portion. I know that was a long segment. But the release guys, we only have 2. Jermaine Gresham was released by Arizona, which I think that helps Ricky
Hot.
Seals
Garbage.
helps Ricky Seals Jones ultimately. And then Blake Bortles, obviously the writings on the wall is going to be released from Jacksonville. They're not going to keep him on behind
No.
Nick Foles.
Nah, he'll be a Dolphin quarterback soon. Don't worry.
That is a very true possibility, actually. Scary enough, but
Just don't buy a home, Bortles. Just rent. You're never going to stay in one place very long.
no. Traded segment, we've got Antonio Brown is traded to Oakland, as we talked about. Steelers received a 3rd round and a 5th round pick for 2019, so essentially nothing. And they took a cap hit.
Right. So get this: they lost Antonio Brown, and they lost Le'Veon Bell, and in return, they get a 3rd round pick, a 5th round pick. That's it. Oh, and by the way, you still owe Antonio Brown $20 million this season.
Yep.
I love those cap hits. Made absolutely no sense, but
And actually, the Raiders only owe like $4 million to
Yeah.
Antonio in the first year.
That's what I'm saying.
man,
So-
gotta love those caps.
Well, Giants did it too when
Yeah.
when they traded Odell, which we'll get to shortly.
Right.
they owe him $20 million on the cap too. That just shows you how bad the team wanted them off of their team.
Right.
They're willing to pay $20 million cap just to get them away.
True.
That's terrible.
Deshaun Jackson traded
Terrible.
terrible. Charles Barkley, terrible. Deshaun Jackson traded to Philadelphia. I think that's a good move for Deshaun Jackson because I think that's where he wanted to go. And
Yeah, he came out on social media and basically said
thanks, Tampa.
his name was in the trade rumors, and he was like, "I'd like to go back to Philadelphia."
Yeah.
He's going to retire an Eagle.
Yeah, he probably will play maybe another year or two, and then he'll just retire, like you said, as an Eagle. So I think it's good, and I think it's helpful. Honestly, to me, I think it helps Carson Wentz because
I do
now you
too.
got a guy that they wanted with Mike Wallace and
Now here's a guy.
and Torrey Smith and everything. These are guys that they tried to get to be that guy, and I think Deshaun Jackson could be the deep threat.
Yeah, he's 31?
Yeah.
But he can still fly.
Oh yeah. So I just ultimately, to me, I think this is a good move for Deshaun, honestly, and the Eagles get a. Yes, like you said, he's an older wide receiver, but he still can be out there with the best of them and run past them. So I think it helps Carson Wentz. Now, Carson Wentz needs to stay healthy, and they need to update that offense a little bit better, and they need to find some guy to be able to hand the ball off to because the ones that they currently still under contract aren't worth anything, in my opinion, whether for real football or fantasy purposes. Ajayi's he's a free agent now, so I just think that you got a lot of guys that it's like the what did you call it, the land of misfit toys, and that it's just a bunch of
island of misfit toys.
island of misfit toys in that backfield. There's just nobody that stands out there like, oh yeah, I think he could be somebody. I don't know.
Nobody wants a Charlie in the box.
No, nobody. Jeez.
Yeah, let that sink in.
I did. I picked up on that one. And as Blackburn had said, Odell Beckham Jr. traded to Cleveland. Wow.
Love it.
Wow.
I mean,
Great for Cleveland.
I heard it all night last night. Cleveland fans, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl now.
I know.
Well, guess what? Giants had Odell Beckham, and they didn't get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, bless those Browns fans. They're really
Yeah, but it's not the island of misfits toys on that offense.
no. I just
Okay.
you know what? For me, I know I'd said last year that I thought that they might be a wild card, a potential team. They came pretty close. They were, I think, 1 or 2 games off of potentially being a wild card team. I just think that this helps them even more so. And Baker Mayfield, I think this gives him another option. Not that he needed it anymore. I mean, you got Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, whenever he shows back up.
I think
Njoku,
Hunt will
Landry.
be trade bait, to be honest.
You think Hunt is?
I really do.
I've heard that that they're going to kind of wait to see what the commissioner
Because he
officially hands down and then
If he's
go from that
suspended till
route.
week 8, right? That'll be a full year.
Essentially, yeah.
The trade deadline is
Yeah.
week 8.
Right. So to me, ultimately, I think that Baker Mayfield is he's smiling right now with this trade.
Oh, yeah.
He's got all these offensive weapons. I mean, it's almost like he's back at Oklahoma with like stars across the board that he's passing to.
Well, the thing it's Odell Beckham. The Giants got rid of him and ate $20 million for a reason. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I would hate for Odell to start harping on Baker like he did with Eli.
Right.
The only saving grace there, I think, and this is key, is Jarvis Landry.
Correct.
That's Odell's one of his best friends. I think he can calm him down a little bit to where he's not such a distraction.
Right. Ultimately, I think they played, like you said, they're college teammates from LSU. And, I mean, since the issue of when there was talks, even last year, when Landry went to Cleveland and Odell potentially being his name being mentioned last year in the trade before they really brought him in to do that extension and everything, Landry was really vying for him on social media, like, hey, come to Cleveland, and it just didn't work out. And finally, it worked out. I mean, last night when it popped, I was like, oh, I was sitting there at dinner, and I'm like, my wife's like, why is your phone buzzing? I said, something with sleeper bots going off because somebody got traded or picked up or something. So I got to get me a drink of water, and I looked, and I was like, Odell Beckham to Cleveland, what? I was like, you've got to be kidding me. There is no way. And I was like, okay, surely, because there wasn't any news as to what was given back. And when I saw what was given back, what was it exactly? What did they get back?
They got the Cleveland's 17th overall pick this year in the draft.
That's helpful.
They got a 3rd round pick this year.
Okay, that's a little helpful.
And Jabril Peppers.
It's a little bit helpful since you lost Landon Collins.
Right. So essentially, you got 2 first-round picks and a 3rd round pick for Odell Beckham. That's not bad. And Jabril Peppers fills a need, which, like you said, they lost with Landon Collins. I thought it was a great they got great return.
Right. I mean, to me, now I looked beforehand, the third round pick is actually like literally one of the last picks of the third round. So it's essentially like the beginning of the fourth into the third, but
Doesn't
still.
matter. You still got that could be ammunition to trade up or anything
Right.
like
But
that.
now you got guys like you just made the comment off air that this could be a potential where they get a quarterback and a wide receiver, young ones right in the draft and build from the beginning together. And you're not dealing with in theory, the drama, the headache that you got with Odell. And we've all agreed, Odell Beckham is a awesome wide receiver. He is top-notch, top-5 guy, talent-wise in the NFL. But the problem is the baggage that comes along with him. He is an on-the-field distraction. He is an off-the-field distraction. It's just, you know what you're getting with him. For good or for bad, yeah, you're getting this high-profile wide receiver, but you're paying for it in the PR side of it for on the field and off the field.
But what top 5 wide receiver is not that way?
Larry Fitzgerald wasn't in his prime.
Right, but right now, Antonio Brown, one of the tops. Drama. Odell
DeAndre
Beckham.
Hopkins.
Look at 2, there you go.
I would say him, Adams, Hopkins, Adams, and to me, Michael Thomas.
Just wait when things aren't going as smooth for him anymore. We'll see what happens.
It's true. Michael Thomas.
DeAndre Hopkins
these
had
guys
Tom
are all-
Savage throwing to him. I don't think it can get any worse.
And a guy from the C-Deck throwing at one point.
I'm just saying, the Giants drafted Odell. They spent 4 or 5 years with this kid, and they are eating $20 million just to get rid of him. That says something to me.
It does to me too, but Pat Shermer is such a hard-headed man, and it's not his way. You're out the door.
I
Landon
understand.
Collins all of a sudden can't play, but he's making Pro Bowls when he's playing for him.
Right.
Come on, there's
He is
something
okay,
else going
I will
on
say
in New
this,
York.
Landon, he's a good guy. I like Landon a lot. Great player. He's an in-the-box safety. He's suspect on coverage,
Okay.
which is why the Redskins are trying to re-sign Clinton Dix, who's also suspect, but we need somebody else to cover.
This is true. They can both be suspect together and not know what the other one's wanting to do. So that's fine. As a Dallas fan, if they don't know what they're doing back there, I will gladly take that.
Landon's coming. Don't worry. Dak will throw him some turnovers.
I'm sure they'll be handing each other. They'll meet each other a few times. Now, ultimately, for us, like some of these are signings that are going to continue to come through the rest of today, as well as the rest of the week. I mean,
There's still some notable free agents out there.
Tevin Coleman's name is still out there.
Golden Tate.
Randall Cobb's name's still out there. I mean, and I just think that some of these guys are just the big name guys have started to fall, like signed wise. So I think now you're going to get into that next tier of
Well, that's what
offensive
they're looking.
players.
These guys aren't really the big names, so they're waiting to see what these big guys' numbers were, so
Right.
they can gauge on what their contracts are
Right.
going to look
Well, and I think that's where you're looking at. You got Ingram, and Ingram was to me like right on that cusp of the first tier, second tier of the free agents, in my opinion.
like. $5 million.
Right.
That's
So what is Tevin Coleman's going to be?
That's what Carlos Hyde got last year with Cleveland.
Right. So what is Tevin Coleman trying to push?
He's not going to get $5 million.
I think I looked at him on Spot Track, and his like market value, I think somewhere between $3 and $4 million. So he's going to be under what Mark Ingram, and that's fine because to me, I think Mark Ingram's a better overall back.
So a 3-year, $12 million deal with some.
I think Coleman's looking for the years.
He's
I
looking
think
for like a
that's what-
3-year deal is what he's requested, from my understanding. So we'll see how that ultimately goes for him. But for me, I just think that some of these guys are going to be eventually rolling in, and you're going to see it's going to start, whether it's today, tomorrow, this weekend. I think eventually once Tevin Coleman's name is, it's just going to start rolling through. It might even be after the 4 o'clock time frame here in a little bit. Our phones might start blowing up, but let's go ahead and let's get into our final segment of today. It's going to be our way too early rankings quarterbacks.
Way too early rankings. Quarterbacks.
All right, way too early rankings presented by Trophy Smack. Trophy Smack, as you know, has 1,000 different unique fantasy trophy combinations. They have fantasy rings, as you can see. We've got one sitting on here display. They have added the championship belts for anybody who is interested in their leagues having one. Now, I will tell you, it is $139, but they are working on a promo code for us specifically, so we can get you guys maybe like we had last year with the championship trophy. If you use it, you get yourself a free ring. So.
You're not going to get a free belt, but
No.
we'll see.
We'll see. Right. So if you go to Trophy Smack's website, trophysmack.com, if you use the promo code TH8FF, you still get a free ring with a purchase of any trophy. So
It's awesome.
all right. Quarterbacks, way too early rankings. I know we adjusted some of them last night because of some trades over the last couple of days. So, but we'll kind of go into what we have consensus-wise, what they are ranked overall for us, what we ultimately have them ranked like we did last year, and then I'll kind of tell you what their ADPs are, because some of the guys that are being ranked overall, where we've got them ranking ADP wise, is pretty far back enough, and some of them are actually pretty early. So, first one, no surprise here across the board. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback there in Kansas City, the fantasy darling of last year that people had mid to late rounds, and ended up getting a guy who was throwing 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. So
It's just crazy to think a regression is 40 touchdowns.
right. Well, and that's what I try to tell everybody that's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes. And I'm like, okay. They're like, where do you have him at? I'm like, well, obviously he's still number one, but I don't bank on him doing the 50 and 5,000 again. Could he? Yes. But I'm expecting probably more than that. I'm banking on 40 and 4,000 is what I'm taking, about 1,000 off and about 10 touchdowns off. And I think that's just because I think the offense is going to be, the defenses are going to be a little bit more apt to knowing what he's
a whole
doing.
year of tape to watch too.
So if that means, even if it's 35 to 36 touchdowns and 3,000 to 4,000 passing yards, that's still number one or number two quarterback potential. So, now to me, he is the 208 right now in fantasy drafts. So he is the 8th pick in the second round, which, wow. I looked, that is the highest a quarterback has ever had ADP wise in fantasy football in the last 10 years. Rodgers was the next highest, and I think his was, I think he was like 4.4, 4.5 was his highest at ADP wise that he ever got. And I mean, we all talk about that Aaron Rodgers is the staple, had been the staple for fantasy football quarterbacks for years. If you were going to go early to get a quarterback, that was the guy that you go take. Now, to me, Patrick Mahomes is way, way out of my even close to even thinking of drafting purposes. There's no way I'm going to take him as in the eighth pick in the second round, or even
if I had the first pick in the third round, like on a snake, I would draft him at the
well,
third.
yeah, in the third round, I think maybe
First
a little
pick
bit more.
in the third round, I would have no problems doing it.
If you can get him to slide to the third round, great. But I will tell you, I've watched his ADP climb on Fantasy Football Calculator, and it started at about 212. And it's went every week, it's kind of moved up a spot. And I'm concerned as we get closer to fantasy drafts that he might be at 201, 202 is my worry. And that's ridiculous.
Won't do that. I mean, there's other quarterbacks that you can get. They're not going to have that much production, but there's other wide receivers and running backs that will have just as much production points-wise as Mahomes will.
Oh, yeah, that you can definitely pair
But I mean,
up.
if you're getting north of 4,000 and 40, he's worth that second-round pick. It's crazy. Now, I don't touch a quarterback
We know.
near that. So
Right. We know you're drafting that 9 to 14 range, if
hey,
that.
but you know what you're finding? You're finding the Mahomes.
Well, you would have found Mahomes last year, yes.
Right.
And I think in a couple of our mock drafts, I look back, you actually had Mahomes, and I think you got him in like the 12th or 13th round. So to me, I look at some of these guys, and none of them are really going in that far back. I think Big Ben's the only one that's going like past, is going in the 11th round. Everybody else is going before then. So
I'll take Big Ben in the 11th.
Oh, me too.
yeah. So, but I'm just saying. So to me, you're not getting these Mahomes guys that are randomly going to show up in these 14.
Well, Mahomes is super talented arm. He fell into the right system.
Oh, yeah.
He sat behind Alex Smith for a year.
Learned the system.
I mean, that was ideal. That year sitting helped him more than I think we realized.
Well, Carson Palmer did the same thing.
Because he just stepped right in week one and just lit it up.
Right, and I know people were like, "Oh, I mean, even we were like, well, when's the fall going to happen?
When's the rookie wall coming?
Right, when's he going to trip up? When is he going to look like a rookie, like you said? And it just
he broke through it in preseason. Remember when we were joking
Right.
about him in preseason?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this guy stinks. Look at he's overthrowing everybody. No.
he lit
He
it up. I mean,
adjusted.
his worst game, I forget what it was. Like I think his worst game was like 15 fantasy points. So for a quarterback, 15 points was his worst week.
Well, I statted out.
That's
A lot
ridiculous.
of these top 10 guys.
Yeah.
He was 4 times. He was in between 20 and 29, and then it was 10 weeks he had 30 plus.
You gotta be kidding me. Gotta be kidding me.
There was a week where Jared Goff had, I think, a .46.
This is true. I think he ended up finishing with like 0.3 depending on your scoring. So sorry, good Jared.
Just saying.
Yeah.
He
so
signed his name that week.
right. Okay. So the number 2 across the board consensus. It was not prior to the Devin Funchess trade. Once Devin Funchess signed there, I moved him up out of my. I believe I moved him out of the 3 spot and moved him to 2 just because I think that's enough.
Welcome.
So, well, I had said that Andrew Luck and Watson were kind of rotating back and forth for me, and to me, having Devin Funchess brought in ultimately, I think, helps Andrew Luck and that offense get that much better. So, across the board, number 2, Andrew Luck. He's actually going last pick in a 12-man league in the 4th round, so 412.
Perfect.
That's
That's a perfect spot.
I mean, that's a comfortable spot for me to draft him. If I was going to draft a quarterback early, he would be probably the first quarterback that I honestly take early. If I was going to take one out of these guys that are going right around him in ADP purposes, to me, if I'm going to take a quarterback early, I think Andrew Luck's the one to go with. But
I think you can lump basically 2 through, in our list here, 2 through 5, and they're kind of the same guy. So I wouldn't reach that early. I'd probably still take the running back or wide receiver that is easier to miss on.
right. But yeah, ultimately for me, we've got. I agree with you. I think ultimately you've got Andrew Luck, Deshaun Watson, and all those guys coming through. 501 for Deshaun Watson ultimately.
Yep.
We've got him across the board at number 3 through 4. I've got him at 3. Blackburn's got him at 3. Trimboli's got him at 4. Then you got.
That's just early. I mean, the free agency's still going on. Depending on what they do,
Right.
he's easily going to move up. He's got a ton of potential, and his turnovers were limited prior to his rookie year.
Right. And then number 4 coming in, not consensus-wise, Aaron Rodgers. I think he's right on the outside of this top-tier quarterbacks for me, at least. Ultimately, I think that you've got him sitting there right outside Watson, Luck, and Mahomes. I think those guys are still just a smidge ahead of him for drafting purposes. Now, obviously, Rodgers' ADP is 406, so he's still going early. He's still holding his early draft status ultimately, but then you to me, you got to get into another tier of groups, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You got Breeze at 5, Matt Ryan at 6, Russell Wilson at 7, and Jared Goff coming in at 8. To me, I feel like 5, 6, 7 could be interchanged ultimately.
Yes.
For me, at least,
Right.
purposes-wise. But I think Drew Brees is going to – I think we're going to see the same Drew Brees that we saw last year, maybe a little bit more passing early, like we saw early on with Kamara. So I think passing purposes, we're going to see him. So
Breeze and Matt Ryan are going to be the same every year,
Yeah.
I think.
You just don't know what Matt Ryan you're going to get. You're going to get the high draft or where he finished last year, or you're going to get the 12.
Right.
I think
Every year he
where he
switches.
finished last year. Calvin Ridley and Julio's a beast.
Right.
I just want to know what they do at the halfback, because Devontae Freeman, if he can stay healthy.
They'll find somebody else to come in.
Now, the next 3 guys are 9, 10, and 11. We'll just group in 12, kind of throw in the last 4 for quarterback purposes, so that way, so you know who the quarterback top 12 are for us. 9, Baker Mayfield. Now, I've got him at 10. Blackburn's got him at 13, and Trimboli has him at a high-end 6. So
It's early, but
You
I'm all in.
all in on him.
I thought
So
about putting him at 10,
that's fine.
but I'm just going to wait and see what
Yeah,
happens first.
no, I understand. And then we got Big Ben coming at 10. We're all about the same. I've got him at 11, Blackburn 8, Trimboli 12.
I still like Big Ben, even though AB's gone.
I think
Juju,
the beat
Connor,
continues
yeah,
on.
Pittsburgh is going to continue.
I'm just worried about James Washington. If he shows up and balls out, we're good.
Yeah. So, and then Jameis Winston coming in at 11. I've got him the highest at 9, and the lowest is Blackburn at 15.
Trash.
And then the last quarterback for us, Phillip Rivers. I've got him at 12. Blackburn's got him at 10. Trimboli's got 13. I think we just got him right about where comfortably. Every year it's like
Same.
10 to 12. So, but right on the outside, surprisingly enough, Tom Brady sitting at 13 for us. Blackburn's got him the highest at 12. I've got him the lowest at 16. So
I still think with James White and Edelman, I don't know what's going to happen with Gronk. They're linked to the top tight end, that Hawkinson guy out of Iowa. They could just keep going.
right. So as we said, 1 through 12, it's Mahomes, Luck, Watson, Rodgers, Breeze, Ryan, Wilson, Goff, Mayfield, Big Ben, Winston, and Rivers finishing out that top 12 with Brady right on the outside. So ultimately, I just think that's what we're looking at. So that's all we got for today's show. We want to tell you guys thanks for joining us on today's show, whether it's on the podcast, on YouTube, and now on DATV. You'll be able to find us on there Sundays, 4 p.m., all the way through the off-season. You can check our site, thehateful8ff.com, for any articles as well as the apparel you see that we have on us. You can follow us on Twitter at jpickle, TH8FF, at jblackburn, TH8FF, and at ftrim, TH8FF. And then next week's show, we'll be discussing running backs, and hopefully the news will be kind of shorter so we can get more into like diving into the quarterbacks,
Rankings.
the ranking purposes. But overall, I mean, these guys are going to be kind of interchangeable all the way through the off season. So, all right, anything else?
Nope, thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
Yep, we'll see you
Appreciate
guys for the next episode for running backs.